going, guys? Welcome back to OneClass. My name is Kevin, and I'll be teaching some economics tonight. A little bit of a background about me. I hold both a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in economics, and I also work as an economist on a day-to-day basis. What I'm going to do tonight is just walk us through a couple of economics questions, read the answers written by our junior tutors, and confirm them and walk you through how we arrive at those answers. So we can get going here. Let's make sure this is working. Looks like it is. So first question reads as follows: what is a survivorship curve? And what our junior tutor's written is that a survivorship curve is a graph that estimates the percentage of human beings in a given species that are alive at different ages. In this graph, the y-axis represents the number of individuals of the population, and the x-axis represents the age of survivorship. Survivorship curves are of three types: type 1, type 2, and type 3. Type 1 curve shows the percentage of human beings that have a high probability of surviving through early and middle life or adulthood, but a low probability of surviving through late life or old age. This curve is plotted as a convex curve on a graph. Type 2 curve shows a constant death rate for the species throughout its whole life. It suggests the chance of human beings to die is independent of their age. This curve is plotted as a diagonal line that slopes in the downward direction on the graph. And type 3 curve shows a very low probability of surviving through early life. It suggests only a few human beings are able to survive through adulthood and die as they grow older. This curve is plotted as a concave curve in the graph. And while that is mostly correct, it is not exactly correct, just because it does not need to be confined to just human beings. It's really just a survivorship curve of any species. So on the x-axis here, we've got our age. And on the y-axis here, we've got survival per capita. Survival average per capita, I should probably say. And as I mentioned, there are three types of curves here. So this right here is a type 2 curve. As a species grows older, they die proportionately with that. So maybe given that it's not just humans, I don't want to draw 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, 80 years, etc. Because that's probably not accurate. I'm trying to think of something that dies proportionally as it goes older. I can't off the top of my head. I'll probably do a little Google search to finish drawing the curve. Here we have type 3 survivorship. So this is for a species where there's a lot of deaths soon after they're born, and very few survive into adulthood or survive longer than the typical life. Something like this might be, some bugs have like a 24-hour life, and then they begin to drop off. So that would be around this point here. Perhaps the ones that go on to live 2 or 3 days would be characteristics of this type 3 survivorship curve. And lastly, we have a type 1 survivorship curve. This corresponds with humanity. In the last 100 years in particular, we have nearly eradicated infant deaths. And early childhood, there's very few. And up until the age of around 65, 70, this is more or less a flat, slightly declining line. At that point, and not this steep, this is probably, I could probably draw this line a little better. Slightly declining, and then we start to see a bigger decline. So we hit maybe 70 or so. And this is characteristic of the human race. I'm going to search up a couple of examples just to better describe type 2 and type 3 to you. So I'm going to say survivorship curve. Okay, so here's some examples of type 2 and type 3. So type 2 is songbirds, apparently. I don't know much about the biology of songbirds, forgive me, but Apparently, as songbirds age, same amount of them die young, as do in the middle of their life, as do old. It is a proportional decrease in survival as they age. Type 3 is frogs, apparently. This might also apply for like species that like eat their young. I know some in the wilderness that's somewhat common. I don't know if frogs fall into that, but these are the 3 types of survival curves. So I'd say cool. With that, we can move on to number 2. Full screen. There we go. And number 2 reads as follows: what is the law of demand? And what our junior tutor has written is that the law of demand states that other things remaining equal, the quantity demanded of a commodity increase when its price falls and decreases when its price rises. The law of demand assumes the below factors. The assumptions are: 1, there should be no change in the income of the consumer. 2, there should be no change in the tastes, preferences of the consumer. 3, prices of the related commodities should remain unchanged. 4, the size of the population should not change. 5, the distribution of income should not change. And 6, the commodity should be a normal commodity. To sum up all those assumptions, something in economics that we say is ceteris paribus. I believe it is Latin, but it could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Latin. And what it means is all else equal. Pretty sure I'm spelling that right, might not be. Don't bank on it. So ceteris paribus is holding all else equal. I'm sure you've seen supply and demand graph before, but I will draw it anyways. So of course we've got our quantity on the x-axis and our price on the y-axis. Supply slopes up, demand slopes down, and where they cross we have our equilibrium quantity and our equilibrium price. But within this graph we have the demand curve in particular we can focus on. So just to reiterate what our junior tutor wrote, the law of demand states that with other things remaining equal, ceteris paribus, the quantity demanded of a commodity will increase when its price falls and decreases when its price rises. So that's why it's drawn as a downward sloping curve here. So we can see when there is a high price, there is not going to be a lot of quantity demanded. We'll call this PH, H for high. When there is a medium price, medium may not be the best term here, but we'll run with it, a medium price, there is a medium quantity demanded, and when the price is low, there is going to be a large amount of quantity demanded. Let me try that. Cool. With that, we can move on to question 3. Question 3 reads, what is a marginal value in economics? And what our junior tutor's written is that marginal means additional. In economics, the marginal value is the additional value that can be attained by offering an additional source of output. So you'll probably hear this a lot in your early micro and macro courses. Economists think at the margins. And what that means is that to tease out the effect of some change, we're normally looking at what happens when one more of a thing is introduced. So you can think marginal revenue and marginal cost. The marginal cost is what it would cost to sell one more of a given product. Similarly, the marginal revenue is the additional revenue you would get from selling one more of that product. So marginal, I'm just going to say marginal X, X being revenue, cost, benefit, etc. Marginal X is going to be the effect of adding one additional unit of Y. So just to give some kind of graphical representation quick. We know that marginal cost curves typically go something like that. So if we're producing here, got our Q1 and P1, and one additional unit is here, Q2 and P2. We'll see that the effect of introducing one additional unit would change the price from P1 to P2. So I'm going to say that's correct. And we can move on to question 4 here. Binding price floor. And what our junior tutor has written. Binding price floor isn't exactly a question, but what our junior tutor has written is that a binding price floor is set above the equilibrium price. It is binding because it requires the equilibrium to shift and resources to be allocated differently. The binding price floor is a government-imposed price restriction that requires the sale of a particular good not to drop below the equilibrium price. So I will draw price floor and a price ceiling for us. I will do the floor first. So this looks just like our regular market for a good. Oof, let me try that again. We've got our supply sloping upwards, our demand sloping downwards, and when there is no price floor or price ceiling instituted, we're going to have Q star and P star. Now, when we think about a price floor, that means it's a government-imposed restriction that the price must be at least as high as the price floor. So if the government were to set the price floor below this equilibrium, call it PF, it would have no effect because the price is already higher and the market would continue on as it already is. So for a price floor to be effective, the government must impose what is called a binding price floor. And a binding price floor is one that is set above the equilibrium. So if this is our regular market and a price floor set above the equilibrium, then the price moves from P star here to PF. Before the price floor, we had a quantity demanded that was equal to the quantity supplied, but now we have quantity supplied way out here. And quantity demanded way back here. And because the quantity supplied is so much more than the quantity that's being demanded, that will leave us with a surplus. Similarly, we can draw a price ceiling. So again, with the price ceiling, we can draw our typical supply and demand. And again, we have what would be our equilibrium point here at Q star, and here at P star. And a price ceiling, as you might imagine, is kind of the opposite of a price floor, is when the government imposes a maximum price. So the price cannot be higher than the price ceiling. So if we were to set price ceiling up here, we can see that the price is already below that. And as a result, the price ceiling is not going to have any effect. So for price ceiling to be binding, it must be set below the equilibrium level. So the equilibrium level would have been P star, but because we've imposed a price ceiling that is below, it drops to PC. From here, you look where the supply and demand curve cross the price. So we can see the supply crosses here. That's our quantity supplied, and we can see the demand crosses here. That's our quantity demanded. From here, we can see that our quantity demanded is greater than our quantity supplied. So this difference is what we're going to call a shortage. People want, say, 50 of this good, but there's only 25 in the market because of the low price. I'll let you guys take a picture of that. Cool. With that, we can move on. Question 5, what is relative price? Relative price is the price of one commodity with respect to another. Relative prices help buyers make rational decisions regarding their purchases. For example, price of an air conditioner is cheaper in winters than it is in summers. Thus, choosing to buy an air conditioner during off-season would save customers a few dollars and strike better deals. I think of, let's look it up, because I think of relative price as price of one good relative to another, of course. So say you're in the market for a new computer. The price of a new computer relative to the price of an orange, the computer is much, much more expensive. Of course, the price of one computer relative to another computer will be closer, and your decision making should be based on relative prices. But definitely could have been lost on me over time. So let's look it up and make sure I'm leading you guys in the right direction. Okay, price of a commodity such as a good or service in terms of another, or the ratio of two prices. Right, so going back to, Mac, computer, and an orange. So like a Mac is like $1,500 maybe. I'm rocking like a 10-year-old Mac right now. I don't think it's worth anything near that. And an orange is like $2. So given that the relative price the ratio between the two, we're looking at a relative price of like $750. Try that again. However, if you are in the market for a computer and you're comparing a Mac to like a Chromebook, I clearly haven't been in the market for a new computer for a while because I have no idea how much a Chromebook costs. But say the Mac's still like $1,500, but the Chromebook's like, I don't know, $1,200. Should make that simple. I'll just say 1,000. In that case, our relative price would be 1.5. In other words, relative price is exactly how it sounds. And we can move on to question 6. What do you mean by economic incentives? So our junior tutor is written, going by its name, economic incentives means something, often money or a prize, offered to make someone behave in a particular way. Thus, it can be said as a system of measures that uses material means to motivate participants in construction of work, for the creation of the social product. The nature, form, and methods of economic incentive depend on the dominant production relations of society. There can be 3 classes of incentives. Class 1, remunerative incentives, I'm not even going to try that again, are said to exist where an agent can expect some form of material reward, especially money, in exchange for acting in a particular way. Moral incentives are said to exist where a particular choice is widely regarded as the right thing to do, or as particularly admirable, or where a failure to act in a certain way is condemned as indecent. A person acting on a moral incentive can expect a sense of self-esteem and approval or even admiration for his community. A person acting against a moral incentive can expect a sense of guilt and condemnation from the community. And coercive incentives, where a person can expect the failure to act in a particular way result in physical force being used against them by others in the community, for example, by inflicting pain and punishment, or by imprisonment, or by confiscating or destroying their possessions. Truth be told, I don't know much about these 3 kinds of incentives. Certainly possible they line up. Again, it's been a while since my early days of undergrad. When I think of an economic incentive, I might think of something like taxes or subsidies. So a tax is an economic incentive for, say, an excise tax, which is on things like cigarettes. By taxing cigarettes at a high rate, you make them more expensive, and people are less inclined to start smoking them. Given that they're an addictive substance, it's not super effective, but it does have some effect. Similarly, subsidies are offering some sort of financial incentive for a consumer to take a specific course of action. So an example of that might be, I know Ontario a couple of years back, I don't know if they still have it, it might have been federally, maybe not just to Ontario, regardless, had a solar panel incentive program, and if you installed solar panels on your roof during this time frame, you received some sort of economic rebate during tax season. I think it was to the tune of like $6,000. That might be way off. I can't remember, but that's what I think of when I think of economic incentives. I suppose I should look into this quickly because I have to tell them if that's right or wrong. Maybe I'll tell you types of economic incentives. Five common types. Paul Krugman himself teaching this. Oh, really? He's gonna make us pay? No, thank you, Paul Krugman. This is also not helpful. Try one more. If not, we'll just move along. Eco-taxes. So eco-taxes would refer to, obviously, pollution is a negative externality. So eco-taxes would serve to internalize that externality by putting a tax on pollution and essentially making companies, individuals, whoever's polluting, pay to pollute. Subsidies is as I spoke of. We'll leave it at that. I'm going to give our junior tutor the benefit of the doubt and call it correct. With that, we can move on to question 7. Fundamentally, economics deals with what? I don't even need to look at the junior tutor to know that they're going to mention scarcity. The problem of scarcity. Scarcity means limited availability of a product, which may be demanded by the consumers in an economy. The basic problem with an economy deals with is that of scarcity. Basically, human wants are unlimited, but the resources to satisfy them are scarce or limited. That's something you're going to read in the textbook a lot. It's a pretty good way to define it, so I'm going to read it again. Human wants are unlimited, but the resources to satisfy them are scarce or limited. This is the reason why I want us to make a choice of what to produce and in what quantities, how to produce, when to produce, for whom to produce, how efficiently the resources are being utilized, etc. Choice and priorities help in allocating these scarce resources to gain maximum satisfaction level. So a question I remember answering in maybe like 4 different courses when I was in first and second year was, what is the definition of economics? And maybe this was just because of the school I went to, but it was always the same definition. A lot of people who don't know a lot of economics will think it's like study of money, something along those lines. But economics is best defined as study of how to best allocate society's scarce resources. So the definition of economics is the study of how to best allocate society's scarce resources. I must have answered this on 4 different multiple choice tests, so I'm really trying to drill that into your brain. But our junior tutor nailed it. Something else I frequently answered is something that our junior tutor mentioned. They said that human wants are unlimited, but the resources to satisfy them are scarce or limited. That came a lot in my early studies as well. Moving on, we've got question 8. I've got like 12 questions here. What is a pure monopoly? So a pure monopoly is a rare market structure where a single firm controls all the market function for certain products without having any substitutes. That's correct. I think a decent example of a monopoly, something around here, is I believe Nestle has a natural monopoly on some springs in Ontario. Can't remember exactly where they are or what they're called. And as a result, they can produce like, for like 500 bottles of water, it was like 30 cents or something absolutely ridiculous. But do my best to characterize monopoly. Definitely have to search some of this up because I'm doing it off the top of my head right now. So I'm going to characterize monopoly. And what that looks like is, first and foremost, that there are barriers to entry. And what that means, there are different kinds of barriers to entry. Sometimes they're technological, sometimes they're natural, as I mentioned with Nestle, etc. But it means that other firms cannot easily enter or exit the market. And like this might be a financial barrier. There's a lot of different things it could be. Second, they are not price takers, as in monopolistic competition or perfect competition, but they are price makers. I got a bunch of notes on monopolies back here somewhere. Give me a sec. Lots of time. I'm going to have to Google it. So in addition to the barriers to entry and the fact that they are price makers, single seller, another one that I just saw. So something similar to monopoly, but not exactly the same, would be an oligopoly, which there's only a few sellers. In a monopoly, there is one single seller. Perhaps Nestle, as I mentioned earlier. Price discrimination. What that means is that they can charge different prices to different consumers. And they have these advantages that they don't have, that firms in a perfect competition don't have. Because of these high barriers to entry, they're the only seller, and it is very difficult for other sellers to break into the market. So as a result, if somebody wants the product, they can charge them at their willingness to pay. Not sure if I'm gonna put you guys through the profit maximizer. It's kind of implied, but I should write it nonetheless. I'm trying to decide if I'm going to draw a graph for you guys or not, because it is busy. But I might can sort of explain it as I go, if so. Yeah, I guess I will. So we've got, as always, well, not as always, but as is commonly seen, quantity on the x-axis and price on the y-axis. We've got our demand curve sloping down. With a monopoly, demand is also going to be equal to average revenue and is also going to be equal to the price they charge. So this is where the price discrimination comes in. With people that would pay for this high price, they're going to charge this high price and get, here, let me draw this quick. People that would pay this high price up here, they're going to get this amount of consumers. So for those consumers, they'll charge them this high price. Then for people that are willing to pay this high price, that quantity will be sold to them, so on and so forth. This is theoretical. In practice, it's difficult to identify in consumers' willingness to pay. But with the development of technology and machine learning, I believe they are making gains in that. We've got our marginal revenue, which slopes down at a lower slope than our demand curve. We've got our marginal cost, which always looks like a bit of a check mark. And our average total cost, which is sort of flat U-shaped. So one thing to remember about monopolists is that in order to maximize their profits, they always produce where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. I'm going to need to look up, and I think it might be where it reaches the average total cost is where the profits are, but I could be wrong. I don't want to lead you guys astray. Right. So this is ringing a bit of a bell. So where the marginal cost crosses the average total cost, this area is where the monopolist makes their profit. So I will point in here, pi to denote profits. And we've got our P here. So again, they price where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's here. So you can draw a straight line up through marginal revenue, marginal cost until it hits the demand curve. Then draw over to the price. Where that same upwards line you drew crosses the average total cost, you can draw left. That box in between is where you can draw the profits. Monopolists are not as good for society because there is deadweight loss, and that will be characterized by this upwards line you drew underneath the demand curve and to the left of the marginal cost curve. So it's going to be our deadweight loss. I've probably drawn this a million times in my life, so you would think it would be drilled into my head at this point, but apparently not. So the point where marginal cost equals actual cost, I believe, is where a perfect competition will produce. So as you can see, the monopolist produces less than they would in perfect competition, and they do it at a higher price. If you guys take a second to look through that, we can move forward or take a picture. All right, moving on to question 9. Question 9, what is the difference between explicit and implicit costs? So the major difference between the two types of costs is that implicit costs are opportunity costs, i.e. indirect costs, while explicit costs are expenses paid to the company's own tangible assets or direct costs. That's bang on. Maybe I'll do a quick little example. So in the accounting sense, total cost is going to be equal fixed costs plus variable costs. Try that again. Variable costs, so this is explicit. But in the economic sense, we need to also include implicit costs or opportunity costs. Implicit. So an example is like, I don't know, you move out of the house. No, I'm trying to think of an easier example. Maybe you go to the store, you've got $2, you're looking at a piece of chocolate or a pack of gum. The explicit cost is going to be whichever of those you buy. The opportunity cost is going to be the one you pass up in a very simplified explanation. Now we can move on to number 10. Beautiful, right? Just what we were talking about. If economic profit equals accounting profit, what do implicit costs equal? And our Janine The Tutor is written 0, which is correct. The accounting profit is equal to the firm's revenue and its expenses. The economic profit, on the other hand, measures the same and includes opportunity cost, also known as an implicit cost. When economic profit and accounting profit are equal, the implicit cost is 0. So I'll just draw that up for you real quick. So we've got our accounting profit. With that, we're going to have profits are going to equal our total revenue, TR, minus our total cost, TC. In the accounting sense, our total cost is going to equal fixed costs. Costs that don't vary by output, and variable costs, costs that are attached to the number of sales. On the other hand, we've got our economic profit. And our economic profit, we've got, maybe I'll denote this, profit A, denote this, profit E. We've got our total revenue, just like we do with the accounting profit. Again, minus our total cost. But with economics, our total cost is going to be made up of our fixed cost, as I just described, plus our variable cost, plus our opportunity cost. So the question asks, if economic profit equals accounting profit, what do implicit costs equal? If you were to set these two equations equal to each other, they are exactly the same minus the opportunity cost. So if this is to equal 0, this would fall out of the equation. And then in both cases, we have total revenue minus fixed costs minus variable costs is equal to profits, and it would be the same. So we'll say, answer that's correct. We can move on. Question 11. Which of the following about marginal change is true? A, that it is a small incremental adjustment, or B, that it is a large significant adjustment. I did go over this a bit earlier, but I will go through it again. Here we see that option A, it is a small incremental adjustment, is the correct answer, and that is true. In economics parlance, I'm not sure if that's a word or not, but I pronounced it as bougierly as possible. In economics parlance, marginal means additional or incremental. Marginal change is a small incremental change to an existing plan or action. This is not material in totals except in the aggregate, and this is used to model the behavior of market participants. In short, the marginal change is, I'll write this out again. The marginal change, you'll often hear that economists think at the margins. And this means what you would think it means from this definition. They think what happens when you make an incremental adjustment. So marginal change. And the marginal change is the effect of adding one additional unit. So a pretty common example of this is, we'll say like happiness and money. So economists loosely refer to happiness or satisfaction as utility. I did economics for like 2 years before I learned what utility was. Utility can't be measured by a number. It's ordinal, which means it can only be thought of in a rank sense. So for example, we know that having 11 utils is better than having 8 utils, but by itself, 11 utils means nothing. So the marginal effect of money on happiness, we know that there is diminishing marginal returns to the effect of money on happiness. So if you don't have any money here and you're given like $1,000, that's going to make a pretty big difference to you. Your utility is going to go up by this amount. But if you already have like $5,000 and someone gives you $1,000, then here this should be equivalent to this in length. We can see that it is going to give you less utility than it did when you had less money. So the marginal effect of $1,000 has been shown here. So we can say, excellent answer, that's correct. Move on to question 12. I believe this is the second last question. Define equilibrium price. The equilibrium price is the market price determined by the intersection of demand and supply curves, where the quantity demanded is equal to the quantity supplied. There is neither shortage nor surplus if the price is at an equilibrium price. Our junior tutor has already drew the graph I would have drawn. So again, we've got price in the y-axis, quantity in the x-axis. Supply slopes upward, demand slopes downward, and the point where they cross, you will draw down to the x-axis. That is our QE. They've written it stands for equilibrium quantity. I usually denote it Q star, same thing. And drawing left from there until it hits the y-axis, that is our equilibrium price. Only thing I might add, called equilibrium price here, and probably most frequently equilibrium price, but it is also frequently called the market clearing price. And I'm bringing that up because it's something they said in their answer here. They said there's neither shortage nor supply if the price is at an equilibrium price. What that means is that there's the same amount being demanded that there is being supplied, and as a result, the market clears. So if there are 50 houses for sale on the market, if they are priced at equilibrium price, then there will be the same number of buyers as there will be sellers, and as a result, all of the houses will be bought up. There won't be any buyers that didn't get a house, and there won't be any sellers that didn't sell their house. I believe we're coming on the last question here. And the question is, in the presence of a negative externality, the socially optimum quantity is blank than the equilibrium quantity. And what our junior tutor has written is that in the presence of a negative externality, the socially optimum quantity is less than the equilibrium quantity. Negative externality exists when production or consumption of a good by an economic agent leads to costs for other economic agents. In this case, the social costs are greater than the private costs. The costs are not fully borne by the producer or consumer generating the externality. Thus, there's an incentive to overproduce the good. The social costs are also borne by the firm. The optimum quantity would have been less. I am going to try to draw the chart for this by memory. I'll check it after to make sure I got it right, but I think I remember it. So we've got our demand curve, and we're going to have 2 or 3 upward sloping curves. So if I'm remembering this correctly, so there is going to be the private market costs. But this is going to be the negative externality. To price at the social marginal cost, we need to include the negative externality in with the private marginal cost. This is called internalizing the externality. And by summing the two, we will get the social marginal cost or social market cost. I can't remember which in this case. So by adding these two, we're able to get these two. So what would originally be the equilibrium quantity and price, P star and Q star, by accounting for the negative externality, internalizing the externality, there will be less demanded, QE for externality maybe, and it will be charged a higher price. I think I did that right. We're about to find out. Social marginal costs graph, maybe. Oh, this doesn't look too bad. Home run, almost. So they've got the demand curve titled marginal benefit, denoted MB. I think that's synonymous with the demand curve, but I'm not positive, so I will return it to the marginal benefit. Here they didn't draw the negative externality. I believe you can draw the negative externality. I remember drawing the negative externality. I'm going to leave it. And the welfare loss from this going to be the triangle from the externality quantity up to the social marginal cost. To the right of the marginal benefit and marginal social cost, this is going to be our deadweight loss. And deadweight loss, of course, is inefficiency in the market. Yeah, okay, so here they've drawn, this is essentially what I was trying to draw. Here they've got the private marginal cost. They've written MPC, I've written PMC, same thing. Negative externality here, they've denoted MD. By summing the two of them, you get this marginal social cost. And that's how you internalize the externality. Proud of myself right now, not gonna lie. That was somewhere deep in my memory. Could say, excellent answer, that's correct. And I believe that wraps it up. Yes, it does. So thank you for watching the stream today. Can never remember what to say here. If you want to ask your own questions, I believe there's a link in the video below. Leave a like, comment, whatever. Thank you for, this has been Kevin from OneClass.